Welcome to the Been There, Done That podcast with Angela Dunn-Cartledge. Hey there, it's Angela from Been There, Done That. If you're navigating the wild, unpredictable world of grief, I want to invite you to something special. It's called Messy Mornings, and it's our free weekly newsletter filled with real talk, gentle reminders, and support that actually meets you where you are. Each week, I'll send you stories, reflections, healing prompts straight to your inbox. No fluff, no pressure, just the space to release, feel, and heal. You don't have to do this alone. Head over to donethatpodcast.com and sign up for Messy Mornings. It's totally free and it's made with you in mind. I've been there, and let's walk through this together. Hey, everybody. This is the Been There, Done That podcast, and I'm your host, Angela Dunn-Cartledge. I'm here with my friend, Peter Anderson, and we are going to talk about the playful couple. I can't wait to have this conversation, Peter. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and about what you bring to the world and what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, sure. Myself, I started my professional career as a contemporary and ballet dancer. And through that, I gained a lot of knowledge of my body and rhythms and physical relationships and timing and the sensitivity of touch and all these different types of skills that come with being a dancer. And as I was coming to the end of my career, I couldn't quite understand why on stage everything went really well, but in my life things were a little bit more challenging. And I came to understand the difference of performing a state and being like in a personal relationship where there isn't an end point, where there isn't a safe side stage. You have to be vulnerable all the time. And what does it mean to be vulnerable where there's not like a curtain to come down or a mask? And so I took some of the things that I learned from being a dancer and I brought that into my general life as well. And so then I started going on a on a venture into my internal world to understand what had rocked me and how I was finding it difficult with intimate relationships and my triggers. And then what was very interesting when I came across your site was one of the things that I'd been looking at is how I created almost like there's a psychologist that calls it the fantasy bond, where you create an image of what you want and you live to that image, but it's actually just built on sand. There's nothing in there that is nurturing you. And sometimes you have to let go of that and see what's really there and work within what you've got. But letting go of that image and that sense of like a dream that you once wanted and let it going can cause a sense of grief within your own internal systems. And acknowledging that, because sometimes we don't acknowledge it because there's nothing literal. There's nothing to grasp. We've created this in our minds. We've made almost a simulation of what love should be. And then when it's not what it should be, we lose that, but we never really had it. And it's a little bit like being in the dance industry, like rehearsing, but never getting on stage. So there's not something to hold on to perform with.
I really resonated with your analogy of the rehearsal, that you never get to the point where you are actually finishing. You're never to a place of completion. And really, that is a real feeling, especially in a long-term committed relationship where you're trying to figure out what's going on. But it is also a fantastic analogy to what you were describing, that you have this idea of what you think you want to do, you think that you're getting involved with, or you think that you're finding, and then that isn't it. You find in getting to know someone that isn't the truth, that isn't what you thought you saw. And I don't mean that the person is lying to you. I mean really that just that your expectations or some lens that you were using may be a little bit different. But I want to get your perspective on the tangibility piece. I loved that word that you use, that it's basically just like a sandcastle that can get knocked down by the ocean waves, because we really can experience that in just humanity, in just general life, let alone in a relationship. Let's talk about what that looks like in terms of how you see that ebbing and flowing with relationships, and how to center those expectations together as a couple.
Yes, if I'm understanding your question, it's there is a sense, I think we get embedded with certain images and experiences that create almost like an unconscious goal. And that can be from fairy tales. From a very young age, we're embedded with the idea of a happily ever after. But like some artists question what is happily ever after, we go very much on the process to get to the connection, but our culture doesn't really go into depth about what the happily ever after is. We are all in the process of getting there, and then off into the sunset. And I find that very interesting, that is what we get drilled from a very young age, just to the point of meeting, but not to the point of engagement. And so even our metaphors and our stories, we haven't taught ourselves what it means to be in relationship with somebody. We don't have a fairy tale about, I mean, Shrek is probably the closest thing that has done well in that area. But just as a general thing, it hasn't really gone into what it is, how do we communicate, how do we connect. We don't have those stories. And so we also look at our parents or other guardians or people around us to try and get an idea what it is, that this feeling, this attraction to another person that we have, and that yearning to be with another person. Of course, it's not for everyone, but just a general thing. What does it mean to actually engage with that energy? What does it mean to build and grow on that energy? I think we're almost educational less with that. And so we start to form images based on the process that we've been fed, or a relationship and sometimes relationships look really good from the outside, but underneath the bonnet, it's a lot more challenging than we could ever imagine. And then they separate, and you go, how's that possible? They were the dream couple. How can they separate? If they separate, then is there any chance for any of us out here? And I think, again, it's we just don't have stories, expressions, education on what it means to actually relate. Because when we're coming together, we're not coming together with a screen, a film, or like the simulation that has been built on images and not on a foundation of reality. There's not much to grow from as a general thing, and people are suffering and struggling because what they've projected out into the world has nothing for them to refer to. They have no information. What does it mean when somebody gets triggered? How do you help somebody out of that trigger without yourself just getting triggered? And then you just end up firing. And then you apologize afterwards, not really understanding what happened, blaming the other one, a little bit of resentment coming in. Why did they behave like this? Why are they like this? Triggers kick off again. Back to the same situation. Don't know why that's happening. So we don't have our language. We're not aware of the unintentional violence behind the words we use when we're trying to express a need that we don't fully understand. We a lot of the time don't understand how to communicate what's going on within ourselves. So, and then words can be misunderstood because of their relationship to the word is different to your relationship to the world. I feel there's so much complexity within having a healthy relationship that we just don't know about. And so we then start to lose things that we were never really there anyway. And then we sometimes push through in a relationship hoping that there will be a change. And then the hope starts to fade. And then we're left with this emptiness. And we don't even know how we got there either. So there's all this mystery entailed in the simulation of love.
It really brings to mind the concept that you brought up in your introduction, in that you said that there's a grief because you have to let go of different pieces, whether it be expectations or standards or whatever that word is that we want to give to it, that there's a disconnect between what we thought we were getting and what we get, what we have. And I feel that there's an added layer to it in my mind, and that is that we continue to change at the same time that we are looking around us and thinking this isn't what we thought. We're changing, our partner is changing, the world is changing. Another pitfall for us to fall into, because there's just constant movement happening around us and within ourselves. How do we attack it? How do we then come at it from a different perspective? We can't undo what we've already experienced to now, but how can we go forward and maybe not put so much stock in the fairy tales? Or what's your recommendation? I should stop talking and let you talk.
Yeah, I mean, I find this interesting because when I had an idea of what a relationship was, and I wanted a certain image, and it didn't happen, and that sense of loss inside, I didn't even realize what I was losing as it went by. But what was interesting is I did eventually find the fairy tale. And so I changed my belief on, I just thought the whole thing was just, you've got to just look at reality, you've got to adjust into it, you've got to learn to communicate, you've got to know yourself, know your vibrations, take responsibility with compassion about what you find within yourself. It's almost like doing a PhD on your own way of communicating with yourself. We spend so much time educating ourselves in the sense of getting work, but what about the education to actually connect with other human beings? We don't spend as much dedication to that. And so for me, that was the journey I went on. I was like, I'm going to understand this so I can have a healthy relationship myself. And then I found it, and it was the fairy tale. And of course, we don't know how long happily ever after is, but I've had enough time to be in a happy now. And so there is something nice in the search for a warm connection with somebody where you feel safe, where you can be vulnerable, where you can be honest with each other and hold the space for each other. And when it's not going well, how to repair kindly and lovingly from when things aren't going in the right way, compared to this friction. So I feel there is something in the fairy tale, but we lack the middle information after the process of finding, like the performance or whatever metaphor we're going to use. And I feel, and it may be different for other people, but I feel there's a few elements. One is understanding our own emotional state and taking responsibility for how we feel. Another one is becoming aware that we may not just be a single entity, that we are made up of different parts, and those parts have had gestalt, salient expressions for our lives that can sometimes compound on themselves and grow into belief systems. That we understand our nervous system, that we're not just thoughts, and that sometimes our thoughts are so painful we think they're real, but they're just another process of many other processes of being. and that our nervous system is also scouting the ground continually to see, am I safe? Do I have to run? Can I engage? Can I not engage? And being aware of when you feel safe in relationship with somebody else. And for me, these are some of the and the language to understand what you need and to express it kindly to somebody, and to understand how being compassionate to somebody struggling with that you can hold the space, that you can hold discomfort without blowing, and that you can then just bring it back, that someone brings it back to what we're actually sharing. Who do we want to be? What energetic connection do we want to have? And then there's the fun point, which I think is a really important recipe. Of course, again, not everybody likes to have fun in a relationship, but I think there's enough people that would be interested. How to have positive humor towards each other. So it's not humor that is degrading or knocking down or pulling the energy away from somebody just to get yourself a little giggle. What does it mean to give a gift of comedy, of playfulness to somebody else, and they take it and they gift it back to you? And how that circulates itself and feeds itself, and your oxytocin starts to expand in that sense of connecting with each other. So I feel there are many ways that we can come together in a way that makes us feel connected, and can go from you meet your prince, princess, or whatever the story is, but then we've got another stage, and that stage is full of growth and understanding, and that, I think, is where there's the missing piece of the puzzle.
I I I like the hope that you're giving all of us, that you don't have to completely ignore the fairy tale. You can have the happiness and the playfulness, as well as a well-grounded, um, well-foundationed relationship that is built on trust and safety. And that's, we give each other that availability to be in a safe place, to be able to speak our minds, to be able to communicate. Um, I really like your description of the middle, that feels as if it's its own phase. There's you meet you get to the sunset, that whatever that sunset looks like for you, and then you move into this other phase. And that is where the day-to-day life, the normal stuff comes in. How do you recommit to the fun and continue to communicate effectively all the time? The journey is constant, right? I mean, to your original point, the journey is constant. This is not something that we can do once and expect to wash our hands and be able to be in that fairy tale forever. It's a constant commitment. So talk us through how you recommit every day.
Yes, I think that's a really important point that you're making. And just taking to the analogy of dancing, it's like we had to do pliés every single day. We started the day, before we were going to do our big performances or whatever, we went back to bend the knees over the heels, and we did it again and again, because that was the foundation to keep us safe through more extreme physical work. And I feel that when we wake up in the morning, if we have an intention of connecting with ourselves, how am I feeling when I wake up? What's going on with where am I? How many spoons of energy do I have? How am I doing at this moment? And so you kind of, because if you're not feeling okay in your system, you can only hold so much. When you're feeling great, you can hold a lot more. So it's just being aware, where am I in this day? And then the intention of, what will I give energetically? What presence will I give? How will I turn towards my partner? And that to keep them, even if you've got busy work today, or I've got lots of chores, or friends coming from abroad and I have to clean the house left, right, and center, and we haven't got time. And it's like, how within that energy do you stay awake in your intention to stay connected? And the less that is in your mind, the further you will get away. is if your intention, you wake up and you go, okay, today I'm gonna feel my energy with my partner. I'm gonna connect with my partner. So I think one of the first thing is intention, and this is why things like if you don't have a relationship where you can put things on the table and discuss them and open them and untangle them, you have the unfortunate possibility of resentment starting to build in. So if you wake up and you're like, oh, I get on, oh, it doesn't matter. Those little internal dialogues, oh, it doesn't matter what happened. It was just a little thing. I'm not going to bother. Let's just get back to how we are. And you've got a little dip of resentment that just drips in and drips in and drips in. So it's also important to know what's going on with yourself. If there is resentment in there, you have to say, we need to have a conversation. If it's not today or tomorrow, we need to find a time. I need to talk to you and share this with you because it's in my system. And it's taking the courage. And this is where it can be very difficult, especially if you like to make other people happy, to go, this has upset me. And it may be upsetting for you, us discussing this, but if we do it with care, I think it will bring us together. And what sometimes people do is they avoid because they don't want to hurt. It's not a big deal. I don't want to hurt them. We're having a nice time. I don't want to. And all those little moments where you push it aside builds up. So you could wake up in the day and go, I've got the intention of having a nice day, but you haven't acknowledged what's actually going on within yourself. So the more you understand, okay, I do need to deal with this. I do need this. It's small, but we've made an agreement between us that even if it's tiny, we know that if our energy isn't clean together, it's going to cause friction. And like you said, with life just throws you don't know what's coming at you in a day. So with that intention, it just helps. Even if we get hit hard today, we're going to stay close. And if you both have the intention, it just helps the whole process of whatever knowledge you have of holding together more possible because of that.
I like the intention and courage, that there's two sides of that coin, right? That we have to be vulnerable enough to communicate how we're doing, but we have to have the intention that we're not going to come at it in a prideful way, in a defensive way, in a, as you said, guns blazing. You don't want to come at the other person, even if you're angry. You get to the root of what you're doing and where you're coming from, be able to work that through.
I think that's such an important thing because anger has so much shame built into it. And especially when it explodes, it can become so destructive. And there's a difference also of becoming angry about how you're dealing with something or becoming angry at somebody else. And when you become angry at somebody else, that can be so destructive. But what's happening is normally there's a red light going off. Something's not okay for me. And if I don't face it, then and then the fear, something like fear, or there's, I'm going to be suffocated, or I'm not independent, or my freedoms are being crushed, or it's become something a real powerful belief system that just goes, ah! And the thing is that needs to be expressed. And it's the thing about being nice isn't good for anybody, I feel. And that's because my own experiences, being nice has caused me a lot of pain in my life.
It's the mask, right? The pretend smile. Yeah.
And it's not being authentic to what's really going on within yourself. But if you don't have the tools, like you said, if you don't have the tools, you go feel it and you go, anger may be the only thing that you've learned to express what your need is. And sometimes you will say something that can never be healed, and it's not what you wanted to say. And that becomes a tragedy within itself, because inside was a really precious need that there was no education on how to express that in a kind way and be heard. And anger was the only thing that person may be given culturally, and the other person can just be crushed. And that I find really sad, that anger is a great place to go, whoa, anger comes up and it goes, okay, wake up. something is seriously not okay, and then you say, okay, I'm feeling angry at the moment, this has upset me, I need to talk to you either today, but by the end of the week, can we discuss this when the time's good for you? But if it goes from the red light into the fire, there is a chance that it can cause damage. That, talking about grief, there's a grief within yourself that's not the way I wanted to express it, but it's the only way that you knew. And some people can argue and they can fight and they're just like, oh, whatever, and it doesn't bother them. But for people that are sensitive from the energetic um, kind of I suppose attack of anger that comes out, it can really make them start to build a wall up. And then that sense that what you both truly want is to connect, it starts to create a distance and slowly starts to erode on itself.
Yeah, you have an obstacle now. It's not as easy to connect because you have this, sand hill and dune in front of you,
Yeah.
to use your original sand reference, that you have to redirect the sand, or you have to figure out a different way. And that was going to be where my next question went, was what happens when you realize you have the wall? What do you do next? How do you reintroduce the playfulness, the intention, or introduce it for the first time if you've never had it to start with? How can you, taking into account your complexity point, that it is so difficult to find that when you have two individuals that are constantly evolving, where do we start?
I think I find the best place to start, there's a few, depends on individuals also, it shifts and changes depending on where they are at. And I think it's a very good point that you're making about, if you don't feel safe, it's very hard to play. If there was a big shadow next to the sandbox with two kids and they could see the shadow, they're not going to play. They're going to be, what's that? So there's a certain kind of safety that you need to have to engage in play. Play can help also as a little sprinkle, but if you want to get to that place, you've got to have a sense of stability there. Sometimes a place to start is actually, if somebody says there's a wall there, is actually go to the wall together and to make an agreement, which can sometimes be the hardest thing, to make an agreement when the person is talking, that you hold the space and you listen. And then if something upset you, then we'll come to you and then we'll listen to you and we'll hold the space and we'll listen to you. One of the main things that I find that people don't get is they don't feel heard. And to have a moment where you're going, okay, let's have a look at the wall. What does this? And they can explain everything that goes on the wall. And there's no judgment. And it's just acknowledge and just trying to understand what the wall is for you. Just that in itself of being heard can start to bring people closer. And sometimes it's the hardest thing to do because people want to jump in. And it's sometimes I feel like I'm a referee, just going, okay, these are the rules that we've agreed on. If you just hold, we'll get to you in a moment. It's like, okay, let's just take a moment. Sometimes I have to go to them, get them to just get themselves what the intention is, what we're trying to get from there. Okay, they come back, and then we go again. So sometimes there's a step, come back, step, come back. But if somebody can express what their pain is, and their partner hears them, not in a, when people say, I'm sorry I'm sorry that you're upset. And it's like, that's not a sorry. There's a...
You can't really do anything about that.
No, that's not a sorry. So if we say stuff that doesn't have heart behind it, we feel it. The nervous system feels it. It knows. It doesn't get bluffed by the words, the pretty words that we use. It knows if it's real or not. If you really want to hold the space for somebody else, if you're really trying to get a sense of what's going on for them. And if you can do that, then some amazing healing happens just from sometimes they've never been heard in their life.
That is where I see the most beautiful shift happening, is what you just said, is that by giving someone that safe space, they may never have had it before with you, but before you, that it's bigger than you in
Yeah,
most cases,
yeah,
that you're trying to allow for open communication. That's where that engagement and that connection comes from. But you can't have that if you've got a rock in your hand ready to hurl it as soon as they say something that you feel wrongs you. That's where um, our my husband's aunt, my aunt-in-law, married us, and she used to say, "Don't have a pocket full of rocks." That don't it, to your analogy of the wall, hers was that you just keep them. Instead of building a wall out of the rocks, you put them in your pocket, and then when you have an argument, you just pull them all out and throw them at the other person. And you probably scramble around and pick them all back up and stick them right back in your pocket, because to your point, there's no solution. You're just
yes,
throwing rocks. You're
yeah,
not actually getting to a point where you're communicating or engaging at all. You're
yeah.
just throwing rocks again.
And then this is what I would find very interesting with that, is I would like to know who's throwing the rocks. I would like to talk to that person as well, and not shame them for throwing the rocks. Just like, what's going on for you? Let's find out. Where did you learn? When did you learn that throwing the rocks was going to save you? And go into that person that's throwing the rock. So everything that comes up with fire and flame has a voice behind it. And let's find out who they are. So it's not just the relationship between, it's the relationship between many that we're trying to connect.
It's a spider web, or as one of our marriage therapists used to call it, a hairball.
Oh,
It's not just a knot. It's
yeah,
got all this other stuff in there. And it is to untangle that. I can see how it's sometimes easier to not untangle, to just start over,
yeah,
get a new table, get a new
yeah, yeah,
relationship. But that the problem is the old saying, and I don't know if you guys say this in the UK, but here we say, wherever you go, there you are. That
yes,
it
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
really matter
yeah,
ultimately, because you're just taking that hairball and all the other things you have packed in suitcases that you won't look at, and you just move them to the new table. You have to, in order to reach that joyful place, that playful place, have to look in the suitcases. You have to do
yes.
work. Yeah.
And it's also, there's another thing I also say to be careful with, is that within the suitcase, you don't have to look at everything. You only have to look at enough that can give you that playfulness. Because I sometimes find that people spend their life in the suitcase because, like you said, it's so, oh, they found another thing and another thing and another thing. It's what is enough for you to have a vibration where you get that sense of joy. Because our journey to untangle the stuff that life has given us goes on and on and on and on forever.
It's a journey, to your point, your original point, that a relationship doesn't end at the sunset. It's not just the coupling that, okay, magical, we have a fairy tale, end of story. There's life and
Yeah.
evolution and things that we do. And I use your illustration that you just gave about sort of unpacking the suitcase over and over and over again, that you're stuck, that you really can't. You're sort of using the suitcase as an excuse to not engage. You're using the suitcase to not connect because you're in fear, or you're in shame, or you're in anger, or whatever that looks like. And so I really, really resonate with that concept of, you can't just stay in the suitcase. It would take you. It's I can think of it sort of like a train,
Yes.
that you're
Yeah.
in the engine and you're cleaning out the engine and you've got it all pristine, and then you move to the first car and you've got that all cleaned out. Meanwhile, new cars are adding on to the back of the train. So you will never get to a place where you're not unpacking some new thing. So don't stay there. Consider it a journey. That's what I'm hearing you say. So correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yes, no, that's right. I think the thing is there may be a few major things that need to change for you to get that joy in your life and that connection, and they can be hard to find. But when you get those few main ones, it's enough for you to enjoy life. And if you don't get those ones, you don't get that joy. But if you try and get everything that you've been like some complex trauma or whatever's been hit with again and again, you're just going to keep your head. You won't be playing. You won't be in the playfield. You'll just be in the I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm broken.
You're rehearsing without a performance,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That
yeah.
you're constantly. I love that you're doing the work, but then there's no fruition. There's
Yes,
no completion and again, I know that we keep saying that, but life is a journey, right? It's a journey with an end that we don't know the end of. We don't know that end point. So we don't know how many days we have. We don't know how many moments we have to enjoy. So why not get started and not be in a place where we can't seem to make connection? Ultimately, I believe that as humans, that's what we're here to do, is to connect and commune and fellow with each other and to understand. That's a word that I use a lot, especially in my marriage, and my husband always rolls his eyes. Like, you don't have to understand everything, Angela. I know, but it's just something that is in me that I just love to understand people and the reasoning behind the things that they do. And so it is really powerful to know that you have the ability to ebb and flow, to back and forth, and to commit to the mission of, we are creating a safe place for each other. We are allowing each other to bring the hairball to the table and to figure out what to do then. If we need a solution, great. If all we need to do is listen, to your point, then even better. It's not, somehow we have these we used to have these toys when we were kids, and they had these little balls in them. It was like a gun, but it had a little rubber ball in it that had Velcro on it, and you would shoot the ball and it would go onto a target and it would stick. But
Oh, okay, yeah.
you could also shoot it and it would stick to your clothes.
Yes,
And
yeah.
that's the way I feel, that sometimes we do those things. We have those moments where we have a conversation, but we're shooting a Velcro ball and then that person takes it on somehow.
Yes.
We don't actually have to do that. It's not mine to carry. I'm just allowing you to energetically release it from your own body so that you don't have to carry that any further. And that's really the goal, right?
Yes, and I think that is something, again, we lack the education in there. We get entangled in other people's energy. We have holes within our energetic force field, wounds that they get stuck and they sting, and then we react to that. And even, again, to your point, even if we get stung, if we go, oh, that was a wound, oh, that hurts, I'm not doing well, I can't cope with this at the moment, I need a moment just to figure out what this is. Already you're not in conflict, even though somebody has said something maybe unintentionally that has stung a wound. You're not, like you said, you're not, the stickiness, even the acknowledgement that it's a wound releases the stickiness from it. But if we just go, I've just been attacked, everybody, let's attack back. Let's win this. Let's suppress them, because if they get too strong, they're going to hurt us again. Let's just break them down because we've got to protect ourselves. And then you've just got this conflict, just bashing at each other, which,
Withdrawal and
yeah,
lack of again, a lack of connection, lack of engagement, which is the thing that you want, but you're afraid of the thing because you're afraid you're going to get triggered. It's this constant
Yeah.
whirlpool of discussion.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Okay. How can we work with you? How can we engage in the Playful Couple, and how can we find you out in the world?
Yeah, I have a website at the moment. I'm actually doing a free webinar. I don't know if this will be out there before then. It's in a couple of weeks. It's the 17th. It's going to be at. You can go on my website and get more information about there. So my website's theplayfulcouple.co.uk, and if not, just sign into a newsletter, and I can keep you informed. And if you want a free consultation just to see the way I work, if it works with you, we can just have a discussion. You can just see if you want to go forward with it or not.
Love it. I am so thankful for this conversation. We probably could have talked for 3 or 4 more hours. I really look forward to continuing to work with you and to understand your process, and maybe another conversation is in order.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. And it's been really, really a joyful conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stop.